Hey, I thought I would do a quick little design for you guys for St. Patty's Day. So I got some red and I'm going to play with orange and I'm going to play with some yellow. Actually that orange is not the best orange. We want a nice bright orange. Okay. Our crayon colors. And yeah, like I said, all the different tones. This is going to be a soft gradient that's going to go past throughout all the rainbow colors. We want to put a little bit of everything here. Okay, so I want to play with some dark green and light green, and we've got purples and blues. Hope you guys don't mind, I'm reusing an old plate, which I encourage you guys to do. We're just going to dampen our brush a little bit. And what I usually like to do is start with the lightest colors and work my way into the darker colors. Okay, so we're going to pick up our yellow. And we're going to start placing that down on our canvas. Okay. Add a little bit more water to it if you're a little bit dry. You just want it to have a nice slip to it. And then once you got the yellow down, what we're going to do is we're going to start picking up a little bit of our orange on the corner just to start blending that in to that corner. And a little bit of water or a little bit of floating medium, and I'll blend that gradient in there. And now I'm going to wipe out our brush just to clean out that orange. Okay, and I want to go back into my yellow again, and I'm just going to softly graze that over into our green area now. And now we're going to do the opposite, pick up a little bit of that green, pop some floating medium right in the middle there, make it easier for myself. So a little bit orange, a little bit of green, and a little bit of yellow now into our blend. And just picking up a little bit of floating medium, work that in there. So now we're just going to pick up a little bit more green, brighter green, and work that in there. A little brightness down here. Okay. So now we're going to pick up some of that lighter green and darker green and start blending in just a little bit darker, richer green into our gradient. A little bit more floating medium. Bring that in a little bit. And so we want to be a little bit bigger down here in the foreground areas. We definitely want this green. He's still a little bit wet so that we can put in our blues. Right. And if you're not getting a good coverage, you may have to let this dry and add a little bit of another layer, and do it again. Sometimes some of our colors get a little too washed out if we put too much medium in there. Okay, so now I want to pick up just that slight amount of blue And we're going to start adding blue into our rainbow. Really giving myself a wide area here, back and forth. Okay. So the trick is not to go back into your lighter areas again, okay, until you've cleaned your brush. So now I want to add a little bit of purple in there. Okay, and deepen this blue area here a bit. And just keep adding floating medium. And then we're going to bring our purple down. Floating medium. Especially when you start into the areas where you're adding another color. You really want to make sure that you have lots of floating medium in that color to add in there. And now we're going to start off at the beginning again and start adding some red. A bit more brighter red. Really get ourselves into that nice bright red that we're going to start at the beginning with. Right? Bright red. And now I'm going to start rinsing my brush a little bit, start picking up some of that orange. And now that we have our nice clean orange down here, I want to add that into this top layer here. A little bit of yellow if you feel like you want to start blending a little bit more before you start going back into that red again. But just do a wishy-washy kind of rinse and back into our nice bright red. Bit more orange on the corner, blend that in. I went up a little bit too low. You can always just wipe out a little bit. Okay, so then that way it brings back your orange. Clean your brush. This time I'm going to clean my brush a little bit more thoroughly so that I can go back in there and pick up that nice bright orange and fade it into that red. So once you have your brush dark, you have to give it a really good brush. Once you have your brush really dark, you have to really clean your brush well, or pick up another brush and just pick up the yellow alone by itself. I picked up a little bit of green by accident there. And also make sure your floating medium is clean too, okay? So once you start playing with all these colors, okay, and sometimes I'll just use my fingers too to give it a little bit more of a blend. See how that's nice and soft gradient? So I'm really liking that now, so I can take a little bit of that yellow out of my brush, and I'm going to pick up a little bit more of that red, and I'm just going to finish off this little corner. But in that corner, I want to add just a smidgen of purple. Okay, so we can add just that little bit of depth into the corner there. Slowly get bright. And then down here in the corner again, that orange. Dampen that up a little bit, and then I'm going to pick up some bright yellow. Just blend that in. A little bit of floating medium. Up a little bit. Okay. And there you have your rainbow background. And once it's dry, if I feel like I want to add a little bit more softening effect in any area, then I just clean my brush, okay, and kind of start over. So my light green is a little bit wishy-washy. I can just float in a little bit more color there. What does blue and yellow make? Green, right? We want to make sure that it's a nice soft blend. And now I'm going to work down a little bit more over my green and blue area so I can multi-load a little bit of that lighter and darker green. And I'm just going to put a smidgen of that darker green in there again. And I'm just going to go pick up more floating medium, blend that in. The green was the only one that I really didn't have, like the color that I had to play with more. Right, so that's why I played a little bit more with my thicket, just to deepen it a little bit as I came across my gradient. And now into my blue. Just to deepen it. A little bit softer look. And just keep playing with them until you're happy. Bluey purple. And we go into our warmer purple. So this is a really fun exercise to play with because it really also helps you to learn your colors between cool and warm colors. Because all it is what side of the spectrum is it? Okay, so your blues and greens can be cool or warm. So it just depends on where is it beside. Is the red beside the blue? It'll be a cool red. If it is the red beside an orange or yellow, it'll be a warm red. Right? And the same thing applies all the way through our rainbow. Mother Nature got wonderful ways of bringing color in our life. There's our nice rainbow background. while this is drying, this is a good opportunity for us to play around and practice on paper how to do these clovers. Okay, so typically we find them in 3, but these are lucky ones, so they're 4. All right, so it's up to you which version of clovers that you want to. Little shamrocks. Shamrocks are St. Patty's, so shamrocks a lot of times are 4 if you're lucky. And we're at the bottom of this lucky rainbow, so there's not a pot full, a hat full of gold coins that are waiting for us. So my little humor here for you. I know you guys, I can't hear you laughing, but I hope you're laughing. So we need some more citrus green or happy green. And this time I want to put in the thicket or the sap. If you have sap, make it a little bit darker so that it stands out a little bit more, pops out a little bit darker than our gradient that we have in the background behind them. Okay. So whatever brush you feel comfortable with, I'm going to show you on with a 3/4 brush just so it makes it really nice and big for the screen. So we're going to double load our brush. Okay. And what I like to do is I like to pick up my brush on the side. Right, so you see how high my paint got up there? Okay, and the same, tip it over on that side so that you're really picking it over on the corner. And then load it up. Okay. And because this cardstock I'm working on, I have to really make sure that I've got a good load going on. If you have wax paper on, you'll have a little bit more of a slip. Okay, and then I'm going to add just that little bit of white, brighten up the end. Okay, so I can get 3 colors going, get that medium, the dark, okay, and I do want it to be like a 3/4 more dark than light, so you can pick up a little bit more dark, move it up a bit more. So it's always good to test your gradient out and just lay your brush down flat and drag it across straight and see what kind of coverage you're getting. Okay, so you can see I have a little bit of paint that's missing in the middle. So there's a good chance that right in the middle there, because it's a brand new load, that I don't have enough paint there. Okay, so when I'm pushing and blending, I gotta push a little bit more to get that paint worked right up there. Okay, and if you have some floating medium, you can put a little bit in that. Add a little bit more paint. And let's try this gradient out again. Okay, so a little bit better. Still more paint. Still got to work that brush in. Okay, sometimes you have to do it a little bit slow. Some people like to do it fast, but definitely, making sure that you're accurate on your blend so you're not making a big mess everywhere. You're staying focused to going back and forth. Okay. And try another little spot again. So you'll see that I'm getting better and better with my paint coverage. Okay. And once we're happy with our coverage and our gradient, then you guys, some of you might be comfortable already with your teardrops. Okay. So it's basically up and over with a pivot point. And all the clover leaves are 2 teardrops. Okay, which create like little hearts. Okay, and you can do it where it's a little bit open. You don't have to like have a perfect pivot point when you're making the leaf. Okay. You can have a little bit open, so you're going to do 1, and then you're going to work your way over, and then, so you can see that there's a little bit of a space at the bottom, but I still have the top part coming out and coming in Alright, so then that way I'm having that bell shape upside down. Okay, so don't worry about your white at the edge right now. If you want to have a little bit more highlight, you can always add that in later. Then I pivot it around. Okay, and then you're going to make coming into that same joining spot. Okay, so I usually split my clover in half so that you're seeing like this a split going in both directions. Okay. Then you're going to start at the top, work your way, and do it backwards. Okay, so if you're not feeling comfortable with your shape, you can just do a rough placement one in there, right? And then you know what size they are, and then just go in the direction that you feel comfortable. If you're right-handed, you're going to be doing things like me. If you're left-handed, then you're going to be doing things backwards, right? So you're going to start at the top here, and you're going to work your way over. That'll feel more comfortable for you. Okay, so the thing about, you know, when you're left-handed is starting at the top like this, then I would start this leaf first. Okay, then you got your placement. Then practice your right-handed strokes too, so that you can get that two hearts off beside each other. I always say it doesn't matter if you're right-handed or left-handed, you know, you really got to practice everything. Okay, so you can see how if I go over it a couple times, it does come out a lot nicer. Okay, and then our last one is basically on that side. Okay, so you're halfway, about 9 o'clock, and you're coming into about 7 o'clock, 7:30. Okay, so you're leaving all this space here from 5 to 7 open. Okay. And then what I do to add a little bit of a stem, you can turn your brush around so that you have the dark at the top. And what I do is I just do like a little tapping to get that V shape in there. Okay, see that? Then I can pull it down to create my stem. So now if you feel like you want to add a little bit more of a highlight to your leaf, you can always fix your gradient and then just fix your gradient here. Okay, you see how high my dark is? Okay, so it's nice and got more dark than I do light. Then I'm going to tip my brush just to pick up that tiny little bit of fresh white. Then when I go to redo my brush stroke again, okay, I've got my white in there now. Then I can get that highlight in there at the same time. And if you feel like you want to go in and just, you know, do your little teardrop by itself, second stroke, you can, right? Going to fix things. But you want to kind of bring it down so it looks like this is a little bit of a vein. Okay? And then you can go back in the second time, and this is where I overlap a little bit. So that it looks like some of them are slightly overlapping the other ones. Then you can go in and just slightly overlap this one. So I don't usually worry about overlapping or flipping my leaves until I've got them all down and I'm happy with the basic shape of them all. Okay. Then if you have to move your canvas a little bit sideways to get that bit easier angle, okay, so if you want to add a little bit of a flip, you're going to stop about 2/3 of the way over before you start dragging down. That's when you rock your brush over a little bit and you can flip in. Okay. Same thing with the other side. Okay. And if you're happy with everything, you don't even have to start at the top of your leaf. You can always just add, you know, that little bit extra. And then this time you're going to rock this direction. And then slowly slide your brush in. So you're just using the tip. Okay. Is that simple enough for you guys to try to figure out how to do shamrocks now? I have made them, you know, a little bit more fancier too. You know, you can do like a more of a tear kind of effect. Okay, where I've kind of made them a little bit more shell strokey. Right, so, and a little bit more bumpy, but I kind of come down and then kind of go up and still get that same kind of heart shape effect. Okay. And then again, a little more bumpy. And then down again. Okay. A little bit more advanced. Okay. Just a little bit wavies. Bring it in, and then out, and then bring it in. A little bit more wavy. So to start off with the simpler versions first, you can always bump it up with a little bit more of a wavy, soft shell stroke in there as well. Okay, and then again, you want to fill in these areas. Okay, so I just tap in that little bit of a V shape. You can always just fill in things if they're not, you know, you don't have to be totally perfect. Okay, then tap in your little V shape and then bring down your, okay. So I cheat a lot. You know, they don't have to be always perfect. Sometimes I have to just use the corner of my brush just to fill things in again a little bit properly. I'm using a big 3/4, but it won't matter. You're just going to make a smaller one, right? So if you see the size of my brush, I'm just kind of bending it over, and my pivot point is not far off the original version, right? So it's just the top part of my brush that is bumping around. Right? So you're using a forward pressure to get it to bump. And then you're going to bump out again. Okay, so it's just a forward pressure. Smooth ones. And in the project, I do use a couple different sizes here too. I use the 3/4, then I went down to the 12, and then these guys I use the 10. Okay, so while you're practicing on paper, if you want to grab a couple different sizes of brushes to try that with. Okay, so you're going to see that they're going to be smaller, right, with a smaller brush. But it's the same technique to create those little hearts. I should have had the technique in the Valentine's area, then that way you would have been pros by now. Right? So if you want to just make them 3, you can. Okay, the traditional one. So, but you can see how it was very dry. Okay, I don't have enough floating medium. But as long as you're getting the shape going on, then you can go over it again, no problem, when you do it on the canvas. And on the canvas that's been previously painted, it's going to be a lot easier for you guys to get that slip going on. Okay. So I have made them where I have the dark on the outside as well, but it really just depends on the color of your background. Okay, so if you're in a really light area, if you've got something else, some other design that you're doing one day, and it's, you know, really, really light, then you can easily reverse this. Okay, and then I would do the opposite. I would put the light at the top, so then that way you're making your little V with the light at the top, so that it's the same color as your base of your inside, and then I would make my little stem from there. So I would just reverse everything, just flip your brush from one way to the other to do it. So just make sure that you're starting with the same color as you got on the inside, and then flip down. So sometimes if you're doing like a big field of them, you know, you can start off with a layer of them with the dark on the outside, and then you're going to do a little bit here and there scattered with the light on the outside, and going back and forth and making different variations. And then as you get closer and closer to the foreground, you're going to make them, you know, even brighter and lighter on the edge. So then, you know, wherever the sun is going to be hitting them more, they may want to look a little bit different. So you can definitely go back and forth with your brush, depending on what you're doing. For this one, I decided that having them with the light on the outside pops a lot brighter with the darker, some of the darker areas. So that's why I chose to do them with the white on the outside. Alrighty, so when we're ready there, got some more practicing going on there. I'll let you finish a couple more leaves, get comfortable. And you'll see some of them I didn't flip. I just flipped the ones at the top, the bigger ones, the big focus ones. And then I just left them kind of, you know, I didn't flip all of them. Like I said, it's always easier to come in and add your little white highlights on the end on the second coat, in my opinion. You know, you just get more control of what's going on, and then you can easily flip over an area and, you know, make it even tighter where you can layer over each other a little bit. But you do want them spread out. Like this one here almost looks like a flower too much, where this one I actually like the placement more of, where you can actually see the four separate little hearts, where this one is almost too much, you know, so it can look like a green flower to me. But having a variety of them, they're all going to be different. You know, some of them in the wild have one leaf missing because, you know, a bug came along and ate it or something. So definitely you don't have to have them all totally perfect. And then to make this guy flipped over, I just moved my canvas upside down on the side, and I made him this way. And then when I made my stem, I just kind of curled him in. So I'm going to show you that when we recreate it together. Okay, so we're going to need some transfer paper. You're more than welcome to freehand draw it if you want. It's not too hard. Okay, so this is the page I printed off from my e-pack that you guys have. You can see the size variation. Now, even my original fooling around was slightly smaller than what I ended up doing, so it's very easy to make it a little tiny bit bigger. You're just kind of using it as a cheat sheet just to get the placement down quick, and it'll save you about 20 minutes or half an hour trying to figure out how to draw it. So I know a lot of you probably can figure out how to draw something like this, but even myself, I have patterns to stuff I've created, and I'll tend to even use my own patterns just for speed, just to get it down and get that shape there, and then out the door, especially if you're doing a bunch of projects. Say you had to do a bunch of t-shirts for something or gift bags for something, and you wanted to do a lot of them at the same time. Definitely working with a quick pattern to get you down and going, and you can multitask and make a bunch of them at the same time if you want to give them away for a bunch of gifts. So that's with any project, right? Just kind of gets you being able to multitask a couple projects at the same time. So our rainbow gradient should be dry. So if you haven't used graphite paper before, you make sure you use the dark side down. And you can see I use this over and over and over again a million times, and it works for a long time. So we want to make our hat, a little bit over to the side as opposed to right in the middle. Okay, so it's a little bit over to the edge. Okay, so you can actually use the side of the paper if you want, or the side of the gray color as your guide on the edge of your canvas. These were just the 9 by 12 boards that I was using, by the way. Okay, so this one here I did get at a different source. So it's a tiny bit better quality. I'm going to start doing a lot of my projects on these boards because they're a lot easier. If you want to buy these instead, they're really easy to store them away. And then you can get some nice frames for them if you want to pop them into a frame. And they're just nice size for our projects to do.
Plus they have those, they're like a tablet of canvases. And
yeah, you can get a sheet, like a paper pad full of canvas paper as well.
Yeah, and then at Michael's or wherever, they have the 50 or 40% off coupon, so you get like 10 or 12 canvases cheap.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, you got to go in there or bring friends with you when you go shopping, so everybody can buy stuff for you. Because they only allow one item for 40% off. So, yeah. So if you guys are ready to get your canvases back out and your graphite paper, you can use a pen to trace over, or pencil, sharp pencil, and you can do these yourself. I ended up just making 2 rows of these. I lost a row somewhere in the process of playing around, and when you guys see my original, you'll say I was playing around a little bit more. So this time I'm going to try and focus and try and get the 3 rows of coins going on. And you can do 2. And I ended up making this a little bit bigger and bringing it down. So you can use the outside of my black line. Okay, not the inside, because this is a pretty thick marker. So just use the outside of it to make it a little bit bigger. And then just to give you some start placement, you don't have to worry about, because we're going to cover this all in with black, so you don't even have to worry about putting the buckle in there. Okay, it's pretty easy enough to do. And but basically you want to just make sure that your rim of your hat is in there and the basic shape of your hat upside down. So you want to make sure that you can see it. Okay. And just to make things a little bit brighter so you guys can see it, I just kind of go overing it again. The buckle sits a little bit lower, so but we can put that in there no problem after. Okay, so maybe you guys can see. That's all I'm worried about is where is that belt gonna be? Okay, making it a little bit shinier, you guys can see it a little bit better. Okay, so you can see I'm just doing like little half circle shapes just to get it in there. If you're having problems, then I can definitely meet with you privately on Zoom anytime. Okay, I got my little template put on there, and we're going to start painting some leprechaun hat with some gold in there. We're going to start lightening up our hat so that it's nice and bright, and we can cover some of our areas that we put for the rainbow behind it. Okay, so we do have to kind of give it a little bit of base coat. And it's a lot easier to just get your rainbow done behind it so that it's a nice gradient. And then always paint right over it. Okay, so if you want to give your hat a little bit more character or make it a little bit bigger or smaller, I just gave you a guideline to make, you know, a bit of a shape of a hat. Quicken things up. Okay. We're just going to keep all the ribbon part there because it's just going to be black anyways, and that's going to cover really well. And then this is pretty much the same color, but I'm going to go over it again. You can use whatever size brush you feel comfortable with. I just get it on there quickly with big brushes. I'm used to it. So you know, you can get that in there. You can always move things down a little bit more. You went a little too high with your brim, but I did want to make this brim a little bit bigger right in the front here. You can always go down a little lower with our buckle. Okay, so you're going to let that dry. And what I like to use for some of our clovers is more of a sap green with the lighter green. And we're going to add just a titch of white in there too, just to pop things up a little bit more too. Let's let this sit to the side here and dry. My new little mat that I have for hack number 5. And I'm just going to show you a quick little we're just going to add a little bit of that white just to brighten that green up a little bit. When we're doing our leaf petals, they're basically a little bit of side to side. Okay? but a little bit on an angle. Okay, so you're just going to press it on and make 2 little humps. Okay, and then bring that down. So they're almost like a heart shape. Loading medium plate. Okay, and then you're going to do, the traditional ones are like 3. Okay. You're just going to bring that in. So hopefully you can see on my dark paper. And then we're just going to go right at the top and give it a bit of a stem. Okay. Go up a little bit thicker here at the top and then bring that in. So if you want to make 4, you're going to split this in half a little bit. So you're going to have 1 here. Too much floating medium there. Happy with it? I'm going to put this in a little bit smaller. Okay. Then you can always do another one over here. So they're going to kind of join into a pivot point. And then we can go over to the side, and this is where you go a little bit fancy on the side. You can flip your brush a little bit. And then we're going to make one to join it. It's nice to have a little bit of a separation there. And then press, cut a little, went a little too high there. Okay, so you want them to be a little bit under. Practice doing a couple little chisels and then press. So you can see bigger scale what we can do. So you can add a couple of both just to make it interesting. I just wipe off the excess and a little spray bottle. And then just spritz it down. Okay, you can see it's starting to dry. You can always just a little bit stronger elbow grease there. Okay, and I wanted to show you guys too. I have my alcohol in a spray bottle, and you can always just spray it with some alcohol and give it a really thorough clean. That'll shine things right up for you, and it won't hurt the plastic. So now that we're feeling comfortable with our shamrock leaves, okay, so now we're going to add a few little sprigs. Okay, one up there and one going that way. Okay. So we're going to put one over here. Okay. Use a 12 or a 16 if you want, a little bit smaller, or just one hump here and one hump there. Then if you want it a little bit brighter, just add a bit more white and it'll stand out a little bit more. Okay, so having your stroke there kind of guides you as your pivot point. And then I'm going to make another one there. 1 and 2. Make it a little bit smaller. Some of that paint there. And I'm going to go over that again and overlap just a little bit. And then flip in to the curl there. Okay, so we want a little bit of a space. Big. And the coverage, you can always just go and finish your second part. Again, going in a left-handed motion, and then another one. I don't always flip them until I'm happy with them. If I do I have enough coverage? Did I get enough paint on there? You know, maybe I'm too gloppy there still in my dark green, so I just got to pull a little bit of that out of there. Add a little bit more white. I want the bottom ones to stand out just a little bit more. And then when I'm happy, you stop right here, flip your brush in, and bring it so you're tipping your chisel out. And if you feel like you want to brighten things up, you can always go over them again. This is one of our clovers. That white up a little bit. And then actually we're going to downsize on this one, and then we're going to make this one just a little bit smaller. So if you have a 16 or 12 or move down to a 10, so it depends on how big you want to make them. So I'm going to use a 12. And I'm going to start on the left side. So I'm going to try and make this as big as I can with my 12. Dark. A little bit lower. Like I said, a lot of times I like to just put them in there. Am I happy with that shape? Then I'll go over them again, perfect them, and add just a little bit more highlight to them. Coverage, or again, a little bit of white on the edge. Flipper in. If it isn't good, you can always add them later. At the bottom, work your way up, or you can go from inside and just wisp yourself right out. And with this one over here, if you're not happy with it, now that you have the smaller brush, you can always go in a little bit more of a flip. Take the back of my brush to make that black area a little bit neat. Okay, so now that we have our shape, we can go back in over our line. I like that a bit more. Start at the bottom and work your way up. Lucky Charms. So we're also going to add a few more at the bottom here, but we're going to get the base of our hat done first. I just wanted to get these background ones done, and then we're going to add a few more in the front. Okay, so now we're going to put a little bit of 14 karat gold into our paintings, and we're just going to cover those up and leave a little bit of space in between each one if you want, just to give yourself an idea of where they are. And what I like to put at the bottom is a little bit of burnt umber, or even if you have the bronze, okay? But to give yourself a little bit more coverage. Sometimes I like to put like a base coat of a darker color down first and then hint it with the shimmers. So gold covers pretty good, so just get it in there. Base coat. It's not very heavy, just enough to get the gold in there. Circles. Some of them are going to be darker than others, or bigger than others. And then now we can pick up our burnt umber. Find a clean spot on my plate. A little bit of floating medium. Because we're going to do some shading now. So just take your small little pen and we're going to start separating the backs of these. Okay, so sometimes what I like to do is turn things upside down so that I can see a little bit better. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is just shade down all the way around the bottom of your hat. I'm going to put the gold or bronze or other little shimmers on top of there again. A little bit of, okay, so our okay, so that'll get you guys going. Okay. And then you can add another one. You go right over some of them. They're like a little bit half circles. And then once that dries, we're going to add a little bit more gold back in there. The backs of your little bit of shading. Well, it can be a little bit more flat looking. So I suggest that you let that dry. And then we can get out some black. And we can start putting in our belt area for and what I usually do is just paint it right over because I'm going to add the buckle all by itself with white. Okay, so it's just easier. Get this all covered in one color. Okay, and bring this down just a little bit. And your buckle can sit out just a slight bit over. Pops out a little bit wider than that. Bigger side than on the outside. And so good. And we can let that dry. So now that our coins are starting to get dry, now we can add another little layer of gold over them. A little bit of mottled looking, still around it. It's still okay. Not to cover up your shading. Just popping in a little bit more of that gold again. Brighten things up. If you want to double load a little bit of that brown around the edges there just to help you. Always do that a little bit too. Load. Get it too dirty. This one's a little bit further in back, so it's okay if it's a little bit darker. Pretty good. Okay, so now we can use a liner brush with some white. Dampen that brush up a little bit. And figure out where you want to put your buckle. Okay, so this is just a square. Make it thin at first, right? And then you can always make it wider. So that I've got the basic shape there. And make it just a bit wider right that area. You do want to see the black behind the belt too. Okay, so it's just making like a little box. And just made it a little bit softer at the top. And then just come up underneath that black line. Buckle. You're not going to really see the top of that buckle because the brim of the hat is sitting there. So now we want to make ourselves a little half circle here and then bring in a buckle. Picked up green by accident. That's okay. There's a little shadow there. Right there. And then we can add as many as you want. Let's do I think you make the second one a little bit smaller, further away. You can always just do one on this side, just to change it up a little bit. A lot of times the belts have more than one buckle. So when that dries, then we can always add some silver over this. Coverage, like it's just popping up with that little bit of a curl there at the top. Okay, so now that we have that area done, we can go back into our hat a little bit. So we're going to pick up our sap green if we still have some on our plate. Happy green. And you're just going to go all the way around. Start about here so you can go straight. Dry spot there, so I know I need putting in just on green. And blend that all the way at the back. This is a time where you can kind of neaten up your area if it's a little bit. And then on the way this way, this is when I start to finish that stroke. End it at the end. Okay, so just kind of straight and just leave it. Soften it out a little bit. A little bit more brighter green. That little area a little bit there. Got some green on my black. Then we're going to add some shadow underneath our belt as well. Just a little tiny bit of a shadow. Dry brush that down underneath. And I'm going to come down this side a little bit. I'm just going to flick it in. Okay. From there. But you can keep a little bit of your lightness in the middle. A little bit. So now we can add just a tiny bit of white. So you're going to flip this around. And you're just going to add a little bit. Make sure you have all that dark green out. And we don't want any more dark green. You can just side load a little bit of white by itself. It's got good coverage. And just a little bit of white. Or add a little bit more of that happy green and do a gradient. But we just want to add a little bit of a highlight in the front of this hat. And slowly kind of blend it into the edge there. And then whatever you have left, you just add a little bit of skimp of highlight into your hat. While you're upside down. And there you go. I'm going to add little highlights here and there. Just trying to make it easy for you guys. Brighten that green up a little bit. Or the sap, whatever you guys have. A bit. We don't want a hard line, we just want a little bit soft. We can always pop in a few more highlights in after too with our liner brush. Oops, I'm gonna pull my sleeves back. Alrighty. And now that we have our hat done, we can add a few more happy clovers. So we can visualize where we want them. And I don't want them to take over the hat too much, but I do want to just add, you know, another little one off to the side here maybe. And add another one off to the side that way. And we can add another one into the side that way. Here. Other side. Just until you get your placement of all of them. You can always go back, let these dry a little bit. I want it to be flopped right over, so I'm going to start the first one all the way over here. 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 Go over these guys. Out of the happy green, so I have to put that a little bit in there too. And so we don't want it to be too white. Over them, a little bit more of that brighter green back in there. See if I can finish this project without adding any more paint to my just turn your canvas if it's giving you a hard time. That curl to come all the way down. See, when you go over it twice, it's a lot more intense. Pops out. So it's always important to practice all your stroke work in both directions. Middle. And one here, we're going to curl around. You can always add a few little grassy areas too, just to kind of break. And I'll do it one way and then flip your brush around, get it the other way. Just a few. We want the focal point still to be that. Same strokes again, just to brighten them up. I don't want more, I just want brighter. Always a little one on the side helps. Okay. Okay, we're gonna try and put some gold leaf into our project today for our multimedia little boost. Okay, so there is a bunch of different glues out there. There's different white craft glue, and then I also found these tacky glues online. I've had them for a little while, so I'm really not sure where I got them. Aleene's Quick Dry, but it's tacky glue that it is. Okay, and then I also have a little bit of adhesive that we used to use in the nail industry, which is a tacky glue that we used to put transfer foils on and stuff like that. So if you happen to have maybe a little bit of that around, and then also our good old Elmer's school glue, okay, is another good choice. If you're picking up the gold leaf at Michael's or Hobby Lobby, you'll see that there is a tacky glue that comes with these that they sell separately. You can buy as well if you want to do that. But if you go into the glue section, you will find an area of glues, different types of glues, and there is a tacky glue. So basically it's the same type of product. Okay, so when it's dry, the trick of this tacky glue is when it's dry, it actually stays tacky. Okay, so these ones you gotta work a little bit quicker. You have to find that happy tacky moment. So, I'm gonna show you a couple different ones and show you just a couple little areas of different samples here. Okay, so this one I can just squeeze out, and I'm just gonna grab a fluffy brush. Okay, so this is one that's got, and what I want to do is just kind of put a little bit of a line here and there. I can do these back too with this tacky glue. And use like a little script liner, a little tiny brush. So that's with the tacky. I got a little bigger area and I got some smaller areas. You want to make it a little bit interesting, right? I'm going to rinse that out right away. And then I'm going to show you some of this other cheap, excited here again. Okay, some of this cheaper glue. That might be a little bit dry. Again, I'm just going to put a little bit of a line back there. Too dry, or there's a wet spot on the top of it. Okay, so that little one is just our cheapy craft. I think it was from the dollar store. This is my glue that I used for nail art. It's, again, like I said, a tacky glue. And a lot of these will dry clear. Okay. And then this one here, I will do. This are Elmer's. Okay. These are just little highlight little spots that the foils are going to stick to. I have no face in this one here, actually. I'll go over it again with our Elmer's. Okay, because I think it's very similar. And close all that up. And but just see that the thicker area ones are going to take longer to dry than these thinner areas. Okay, you can almost see the shine on them, that they're still wet. Okay. And I'm just going to take a second here and dry them just a little bit. Okay, so all I did was take my canvas and wave it around a little bit, so I didn't want to take the heat to it. Okay. So now we can pull out a little bit of our foils, and you got to be careful not to breathe on this stuff because they will go everywhere. And if they're big chunky pieces, you can just break them up a little bit. And then I'm going to take a clean brush that's just clean, and I'm just going to dampen it with a little bit of water just to say that it's a little bit damp, so that this will help me pick up these little foils and place them down into those wet areas. And you don't have to be perfect about where you're putting them, okay, because they're only going to stick where the glue is. Okay. And then once this is dry, we're going to brush off the excess. Okay, so I'm looking for areas that are starting to dry. See, this one here is definitely a little bit dry there, but it's still white looking. Okay, so I'm going to add that in there. I'll have to put a little more pressure onto this one. I'm just trying to find that happy moment. See, this tacky glue is still tacky even though it's dry, but I can actually press on it. And I just want to catch little glimpses of the foil. Got that big piece right there. There. It's stick to you sometimes. Use the back of my brush. Down. A little bit too dry. So you can see that wherever it's too dry, it's not sticking anymore. So there's a tacky moment that you're going to find in your glues. Okay? I've even seen people use like glue sticks too, you know. And then what you can do to add a little bit more of a sealer to it after is just give it a little bit of a spritz of varathane, and then that will really hold your foils down if you're worried about them falling. All that excess is back in the bag for next time. I swear, everything comes back in time. It's so funny. In the nail industry, we used to do this on our nails back in the day before shellac was invented on regular polish. And talk about waiting for polish to dry and waiting for this to dry and then top coating and waiting for that to dry. You know, it's so funny how, you know, everything comes back, you know, and so it's funny how now we're starting to put the gold leaf into art and designs, and but it was very, very limited, say probably 30 years ago. I don't want to show my age, but Yeah, this gold leaf has been around for a long time, and I'm just excited to play with it in some multimedia kind of ways. Okay, so we're just letting this dry, right? Give that a moment. While our gold leaf is drying, you can always add a little bit of pop into the buckle now. So I have some sterling silver, sterling, or way you want to say that. And then I have Glitterific. Okay, so that could be a lot of fun too, to pop more twinkle into his buckle. Okay, so all I really need is a tiny little bit of this. Sometimes I'll just shake the bottle, and I'll just use a small brush, and I just use the lid to pop in a little bit of that color. We're just adding some silver to that white and shimmer. And because we have the white behind it, it's going to pop up really nicely. Always go back in with your black and fix things if you have a mistake there. And then just add silver to golds. And I'll let that dry, and then if I still want to add more pop to it, then I can add just a few twinkles of glitter in there. A little bit cleaner line of black in there. And then also what I'm going to do is just kind of thin this out a little bit so that it looks like it's a little bit of a peg. In the circle. I like that. Looking a little bit defined, so you can always go in. Right. A bit more. A little bit thick on that one. Okay, so now that your gold leaf is dry, we're just going to take a dry scruffy, okay, and you can just lightly dust away anything that is not stuck to it. Just very lightly. See that the rest flies away. And if anything didn't get stuck, you ended up taking it away, like I just did to this one. It must have been one of those glues. That was the school glue that we did last. Okay, so definitely, you know, there's some glues that are going to be a little bit better than others, and doesn't hurt though to just knock it off and add a little bit more. If I have some remnants here that I can add back in there. I'm off in the dusting. Put them back here. It even comes in silver and more bronzy color, coppery colors. I could even do a bunch of silver in the buckle if you really wanted to. Okay, so now that our gold is dry, what I want to try and do now is pop in just that little bit of greeny kind of browny kind of shading going on here. We want it to be like a dirty brown, dirty green, a little bit of burnt umber, and we're going to add our floating medium. And then what we're going to do is just put the smallest trace of a tiny little one in there. And then you don't always have to see all of it. It's illusions. And you can always make this one upside down. I'm just going to put a little look into our coins. Just using the shading. And with the gold leaf, it'll still pop out even if you paint on top of it. Always over it a little bit. Of course, if there's room for one to be perfect, you want to make a couple of them stand out a little bit more finished. I'm going to use a tiny little 2 to get these in here. And here's going to hide back there. Just getting that little bit of illusion. Okay? Because yes, we're going to pop this up just a little bit more. You can always add a little bit more gold paint in there. A little stem in there to make it look like a couple are finished, coming in different directions. I try not to make them too big. Okay. When they dry, I'm going to put a little bit of a glazing effect over them. Just to tone them back down again. Mute things down a little bit more. And then also painting that little bit of gold right onto your gold leaf. That'll help hold things down too. See how it kind of reflects a little bit different. You can layer a couple of your coins just over the edge They look like they're popping out. And something like that. Okay, so I'm thinking that it just needs more gold. And so I'm going to just go right over this. Try to stay away from my lines. I have this conveniently in a brush already. You just scoop some on a plate and use a small brush if you want. Add that in there around the whole area. Add my This is what you get, folks, when you watch me do things on live as I create them, or how my brain works. I think this just needs more little lines. We're going to add more. So you can add glitter if you wanted, or any other kind of shiny surface product. Quickly get them all down there. Not too thick, not too thin. Just enough to wet it quick. Pop out our gold leaf again. Try to just pull it a little bit at a time. You definitely don't want to empty this out. Dampen my brush so I can pick up the leaf. Pick that a little bit more. And then we're going to just start laying it inside our coins. Like I said, just try to stay away from your lines. It's folded on top of each other, so it's already started to dry a little bit. Either work really quickly or just do little areas at a time. Always re-wet it with the glue, and any bigger areas, just get them down good. And I'm not even really trying to be neat with it, I'm just trying to get it down. Wherever it's wet, it's gonna stick. Or tacky. I see some of it's not sticking too good, then you just might have to re-wet an area. And not to play with it too much. Put it on there and tap it into place. And you can start grabbing some smaller pieces and just pop them in. Make them look like real gold in there. There's gold in them there hills. Yeah, that's starting to look good. What do you think, guys? It's up to you how you want to do them. You know, if you like my original idea, you don't have the gold leaf and you just have the gold glitter or shimmer paints. And, that'll work good too. And you can always add this down the road, maybe if you decide that you want to go shopping and grab some. Then always add to it. So when I want to go in when it dries, I want to pop these lines up a little bit more and define them. Okay. So I got a little bit of gold leaf on my. So I just wet my brush and give it a little scrub. Just to get some of that off. And I may have to go back in and just fix that little piece. Always paint over here again and fix any areas up. You want to make sure that this is really good and dry before we paint on it. I always come up with quicker ways to do the paint parties after we can get to the point of it all. Okay, so then Definitely would have done that sooner and then maybe done these leaves after. Yeah, yeah. Nice big bucket of gold. Alrighty. So let's detail this gold here a little bit. I did find this other bag of gold I had for a while, and I did find another one here, and you can see that this was from Dollarama, $1.25, and it came, I'm sure it came in a bunch of different colors, but it didn't have lots of silver, so I just grabbed one from the dollar store. And but this gold I've had for a long time, and it lasts forever. You've seen how little that I used. So one little package is going to give you lots and lots of gold leaf to play in lots of future projects. I'm sure once you get a little bit of taste of this, you're going to get hooked to it. Okay, so what I want to do is just kind of soften it a little bit and add a little tiny bit, not soften it, I still want it to be bright, but I'm just adding just a tiny little bit of gold paint in here. And actually I'm just doing more like the under areas to use the gold as a little bit of a shadow on the bottom areas. Kind of work that gold in there and almost glue down the gold a little bit more. Okay, so not lots, guys. Okay, I'd rather see you use a little bit of a varathane to help protect these guys than add too much color. Okay, so you're going to rinse your brush and just pick up a small tiny little bit of that burnt umber. Okay, try to find a clean spot on your, see over here how much of a small little amount I have here. Okay, just a tiny little bit, and a tiny little bit of green if you want, but more brown than green. Now I've lost that line. I'm really blending my brush in, and just so I can get back that clean line again. So what I want to do is emphasize the backs of them. So I'm just going to do a reverse shade around the foreground ones. Okay, so that's just going to pop them out just a little bit more, and maybe to separate one. Add a little bit of shading to this area here. You'll see that you can paint right on top of the gold. It's just enough to define them a little bit. I'm going to define this one a little bit more. See behind this one. Find one. So they look like little tiny bunches of gold. But you want to do it from behind. And if you're going to take pictures and share this on the group, guys, take a picture before you spray it with varathane, because it'll be a lot easier to get a nice picture, because if you have it too shiny with varathane, then it's really hard to take pictures. And the best place to take one is with natural lighting hitting it. You can put it in a room where you have a little bit of natural light coming in, not a sunbeam, I just mean nice bright daylight coming in at it. And then you'll get a nice picture of it too. But yeah, I think I'm liking just the way it is, just with a bunch of little shiny little coins. Happy painting. We'll see you soon.